I am Mason, 26 years old and currently a computer science student at MIT. My relationship with my family has always been strained, especially with my father, who never tried to hide his preference for my brother. Last month, I received an ultimatum about attending my brother Trevor's wedding that pushed me to my limit. What my family never realized was that I had achieved financial independence long ago. The confrontation at the wedding changed everything between us forever. Before I dive into this family drama, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Also, if you appreciate real stories about standing up for yourself, hit that like button and subscribe to see more content like this. Now let me take you back to where it all started. I grew up in a sprawling suburban home in Naperville, just outside Chicago. Our house was the kind with a perfectly manicured lawn that my father Richard insisted on maintaining himself despite having the money to hire help. He said it taught discipline, but I think he just liked the neighbors seeing him work outside. My father built his marketing firm from scratch, turning it into a regional powerhouse with clients all across the Midwest. He never let anyone forget it either. My mother Eleanor was beautiful, intelligent, and completely submissive to my father's will. She had been an art history major in college with dreams of working in a museum, but those aspirations disappeared after marriage. Instead, she focused on creating the perfect home and raising the perfect family, or at least that was the appearance we maintained. Then there was Trevor, my older brother by 3 years. From the moment he could walk, he was groomed to follow in our father's footsteps. While most kids got bedtime stories about talking animals, Trevor got lessons about business strategy and networking. By high school, he could charm any adult in the room, knew how to give a firm handshake, and could recite our father's business philosophy verbatim. Our house was a shrine to Trevor's achievements. The living room displayed all his sports trophies, even though he was only ever average at baseball and basketball. His academic certificates and awards lined the hallway. When he got accepted to Northwestern with a decent but not exceptional scholarship, my parents threw a party and invited everyone they knew. When I later got accepted to MIT with a partial scholarship, my father simply nodded and said, "Computer science, is that what you want to waste your time on?" My earliest memory of realizing the difference between us was when I was 7. I had built a complex structure out of Legos that took me days to complete. I was proud of the intricate design and ran to show my parents. My mother gave a distracted, "That is nice, honey," while my father barely looked up from helping Trevor with his science fair project about business cycles, which he had mostly done himself. "Mason, Trevor is working on something important. Go play with your toys somewhere else," my father said, dismissing hours of my careful work as mere play. That pattern continued throughout our childhood. Trevor would get the newest basketball shoes because he needs them for the team. I would get his old ones even though they hurt my feet. Trevor got a car for his 16th birthday. When my 16th came around, I was told I could use the family's third car when no one else needed it. When I was 14, I created a simple app that helped organize schoolwork and shared it with some friends. Soon, half the school was using it. I excitedly told my father about it, thinking finally I had done something he would appreciate. "That is cute, Mason, but there are already plenty of calendar apps out there. Focus on your grades instead of playing around with computer games," he said. My mother never directly participated in the favoritism, but she enabled it. Whenever I would complain about the unfair treatment, she would say things like, "Your father just wants what is best for both of you," or, "Everyone has different talents, honey. Trevor just happens to share interests with your father." Extended family gatherings were particularly painful. My Aunt Catherine would always ask Trevor about his business classes and internships, while asking me if I was still doing that computer thing. My grandfather would slip Trevor extra money while telling him he was proud of the man he was becoming. I would get a pat on the head and a piece of candy well into my teens as if I were still a small child. By 16, I had given up seeking approval and instead focused on my escape plan. I threw myself into programming, staying late at school to use their computers since my home desktop was outdated. I joined every tech club and competition available. I built websites for local businesses for small fees that I saved religiously. While Trevor was attending business networking events with our father, I was teaching myself Python, Java, and C++. There was one time when I thought things might change. I won a regional coding competition my junior year of high school. The local newspaper even ran a small article about it. My mother cut it out and put it on the refrigerator, beaming with pride. For a moment I felt seen. Then my father came home, glanced at the article and said, "Computers are becoming a commodity skill. Everyone can code these days. Trevor just secured an internship at Deloitte for the summer. That is how you build a career." The article disappeared from the refrigerator the next day. Despite all this, I never hated Trevor. He was a product of our environment just as much as I was. Occasionally, when our parents were not around, he would show glimpses of genuine brotherly affection. He once stood up for me when a neighbor kid was bullying me. Another time, he secretly helped me fix my bike when I broke it attempting a ramp jump, but those moments were rare and always evaporated when our father appeared. By senior year of high school, I had one goal: get into a top computer science program as far away from home as possible. I applied to MIT, Stanford, Carnegie Mellon, and a few safety schools. When the acceptance letter from MIT arrived with a partial scholarship, I felt like I could finally breathe. My ticket out was secured. Even then, my father found a way to diminish my achievement. East Coast schools are overrated. Too theoretical. Not enough real-world application, he said at dinner the night after my acceptance. But if that is what you want, I suppose we will make it work financially. Those words, "we will make it work financially," would become a chain around my neck for years to come. Every conversation about tuition came with reminders of the sacrifice they were making, even though I knew my parents could easily afford it. Every phone call home included questions about whether I was taking practical courses that could lead to a real job. What they did not know was that their golden boy Trevor was not the only one with ambition. I had plans of my own, and MIT was just the beginning. Arriving at MIT was like stepping onto another planet. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who spoke my language, who did not look at me strangely when I talked about programming for fun. My roommate Jacob was developing his own video game. The girl across the hall, Aisha, had built a robot that could navigate obstacle courses. These were my people. My father's enthusiasm about my college choice remained non-existent. During move-in day, while other parents were taking photos and helping decorate dorm rooms, my father spent most of the time on business calls. Before leaving, he pulled me aside for what I thought might be a heartfelt moment. "Remember, Mason, this is costing us $60,000 a year after your scholarship. Make it count. And none of those startup pipe dreams. Get a stable job at a good company when you graduate." He handed me my first semester's spending money in an envelope, as if I were still a child receiving an allowance. My mother hugged me goodbye with tears in her eyes. "We are proud of you," she whispered, though I noticed she said it when my father was out of earshot. Despite my father's warnings, I threw myself into everything MIT had to offer. I took maximum course loads, joined the coding club, and spent late nights in the computer lab working on personal projects. While other freshmen were partying, I was building prototype apps and learning about venture capital. During my sophomore year, I met Professor Jenkins in my advanced algorithms class. Unlike most professors who maintained professional distance, Jenkins took a personal interest in his students. After I aced his notoriously difficult midterm, he asked me to stay after class. "You have a gift, Mason," he said, leaning against his desk. "Not just for coding, but for seeing problems that need solving. What are you doing with that talent outside of class?" I hesitantly showed him an app I was developing that helped students find the shortest routes between classes while avoiding weather exposure, a particularly useful tool during Boston winters. He looked at it for a few minutes, asking questions about my implementation choices. "This is commercial quality work," he said finally. "Have you considered bringing this to market?" That conversation changed everything. Professor Jenkins became my mentor, introducing me to alumni who had successfully launched tech startups and helping me refine my ideas. With his guidance, I polished my campus navigation app, added features like indoor mapping and accessibility options, and launched it officially halfway through sophomore year. To my shock, it took off. Within weeks, over 80% of MIT students were using it. Then other Boston area schools started reaching out. Harvard wanted a version, so did Boston University and Northeastern. By the end of the semester, I had adapted the app for 5 different campuses and was generating modest but real income from premium features and targeted advertising from campus bookstores and local businesses. During winter break, I returned home with my first real earnings, about $20,000 sitting in my bank account. At dinner, my father asked the usual questions about grades and job prospects. Trevor, who had graduated and was now working at our father's firm, talked endlessly about the small accounts he was being allowed to manage. "Mason, have you started looking at internships?" "Yet." Trevor had 3 by this point in his college career, my father said, between bites of pot roast. I considered telling them about my app's success, but stopped myself when I saw the dismissive look already forming on my father's face. He would find a way to minimize it, to compare it unfavorably to Trevor's achievements. Instead, I simply said I was exploring options. "Do not wait too long. The good positions fill up fast," Trevor added helpfully, completely unaware that I was already earning more from my app than his entry-level position paid. When I returned to MIT after break, I decided to keep my growing success to myself. I created an LLC to manage the business side of things, got proper accounting, and filed taxes independently. Professor Jenkins connected me with a former student who had become a business attorney, and she helped me navigate the legal aspects of my expanding enterprise. By junior year, I had expanded my original app concept into a comprehensive campus life platform. It now included features for finding study groups, rating dining hall food, and coordinating ride shares for breaks. I launched at 15 more schools across the country, carefully selecting campuses with similar needs and adapting the platform for each location. The money started flowing in more seriously. I hired fellow students as contractors to help with development and began working with a small marketing team. By the end of junior year, my company was valued at over $2 million, and I had personally taken home over $300,000 in profits. All while my father continued to send his condescending quarterly tuition payments with notes, reminding me how fortunate I was to have his support. During holiday visits home, the dynamic remained unchanged. Trevor continued his ascent at our father's company, now managing actual client accounts and being groomed for an executive position. Family conversations revolved around his accomplishments. His girlfriend Jessica, who was the daughter of one of my father's business associates, and the house he was planning to buy with my parents' generous loan that we all knew would never be repaid. I sat through it all quietly, no longer feeling the sting I once had. I had found confidence in my own path and validation from people whose opinions actually mattered to me. Professor Jenkins believed in me. My small team looked up to me. My users appreciated the products I created. Back at MIT, I had built a circle of friends who became the family I chose. There was Jacob, my roommate, who had become my best friend and occasional coding partner. Diana, a brilliant economics major, who helped me understand the financial side of my business. Raj, whose cybersecurity expertise proved invaluable as my user base grew. And then there was Zoe. I met Zoe at a hackathon during first semester junior year. She was a cognitive science major with a minor in computer science, fascinated by how humans interacted with technology. She approached me after seeing a demonstration of my latest project, asking insightful questions about user experience that I had not considered. We started dating a month later, and for the first time I opened up completely to someone about my family situation. Zoe came from a supportive household with parents who celebrated her achievements and respected her choices. She could not fathom parents who played favorites so blatantly. "You know you do not need their approval anymore, right?" she said one night, as we walked along the Charles River. "You have built something amazing on your own terms." "I know," I replied, "but there is still this little kid inside me who wants his dad to be proud of him." Zoe squeezed my hand. "That is understandable. Just do not let that kid make your adult decisions." By senior year, my company had grown beyond what I could handle while still being a full-time student. With Professor Jenkins' guidance, I brought on a CEO with experience scaling startups, maintaining my position as founder and product architect. The company raised a small round of funding, pushing its valuation to $15 million. My personal net worth on paper at least was now over $5 million. All while receiving those quarterly reminders from my father about how generously he was supporting my education. I considered telling my family numerous times, especially my mother, who I thought might genuinely be happy for me, but something always held me back. Part of it was knowing my father would find a way to claim credit or diminish my achievement. Part of it was simple self-preservation. For the first time in my life, I had something that was entirely mine, unsullied by family dynamics. As graduation approached, I faced a decision. The company was taking off with acquisition offers already coming in from larger tech firms. I could cash out and be set for life before my 23rd birthday. Alternatively, I could stay on guide its growth and potentially build something even bigger. I decided to defer the decision by applying to MIT's graduate program. I wanted to deepen my technical knowledge while giving myself time to consider my options. When I was accepted with a full scholarship based on my academic performance, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I would no longer need my father's financial support, tenuous and conditional as it always was. I planned to tell them at graduation to finally reveal what I had built while they thought I was just playing with computers. But before I could, Trevor's engagement announcement changed everything. The call came on a Sunday evening in early April, just as I was wrapping up a problem set for my advanced machine learning course. My mother's name flashed on my phone screen, which was unusual. Our communications typically happened on scheduled Saturday morning calls. "Mason, wonderful news," she exclaimed without preamble. "Trevor proposed to Jessica last night. They are getting married in June." "That is great, Mom," I said, genuinely happy for my brother despite our complicated relationship. "Tell him congratulations from me. You can tell him yourself at dinner on Friday. We expect you home this weekend for the engagement celebration." I paused, mentally reviewing my schedule. "Mom, I have a major project due next Monday. I cannot just drop everything and fly home." There was a moment of silence before my mother's voice returned noticeably cooler. "This is your brother's engagement, Mason. Family comes first." "I understand that, but my education is important too. I will try to make it to the actual wedding, but this weekend is impossible." I heard my father's voice in the background demanding to know what was going on. Then he was on the phone. "Mason, what is this about you not coming home? Your brother is engaged to Jessica Davis. Her father is one of our biggest clients. This dinner is important." "I am sorry, Dad, but I have academic commitments I cannot break." "Academic commitments," he scoffed. "Trevor is cementing business relationships that will benefit this family for years. Surely your little computer assignment can wait." And there it was, the same dismissal I had heard my entire life. My work, my priorities, my choices were always less important than Trevor's. "I am sorry, but I cannot make it. I will call Trevor separately to congratulate him." The calls continued all week. My mother tried guilt, reminiscing about how close Trevor and I had been as children, conveniently forgetting the years of favoritism that had driven us apart. My father alternated between commands and veiled threats about how my absence would reflect poorly on the family. Trevor himself called midweek, sounding genuinely disappointed that I might not attend the engagement dinner. "Come on, little brother. It would mean a lot to have you there. Jessica is excited to meet you finally." "I have met Jessica twice already," I reminded him. "At Christmas 2 years ago, and at your graduation party." "Oh, right," he said, and I could practically hear him wincing. "Well, things are different now. She will be family, and Dad is inviting some important people. It would look weird if you were missing." There it was. Not I want my brother there for this important moment, but it would look weird to important people if you were absent. Some things never changed. The final ultimatum came Thursday night. I was in the lab working with my research group when my phone rang. Seeing my father's name, I excused myself to take the call in the hallway. "Mason, I am only going to say this," once my father began without greeting. "Your brother's wedding is on June 15th. You will be there and you will participate as a groomsman, as Trevor has requested. If you cannot commit to being there, I will be forced to reconsider my financial support for your graduate studies." My heart raced as anger and indignation flooded through me. "Are you seriously threatening to cut my tuition if I do not attend a wedding?" "I am saying that family obligations go both ways. We support you, and you support the family. It is that simple." What my father did not know was that I did not need his financial support anymore. My graduate program was fully funded and my company was thriving, but something kept me from revealing that just yet. "Fine," I said after a long pause. "I will be at the wedding. And the engagement dinner tomorrow." "Number, that is impossible, but I will be at the wedding." He huffed in displeasure but accepted the compromise. After hanging up, I leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. Zoe found me there a few minutes later. "Everything okay?" she asked, concern evident in her eyes. I filled her in on the conversation and the ultimatum. As I spoke, I realized I was making a decision. "I think it is time they knew the truth," I said finally. "About everything." Zoe squeezed my hand. "Are you sure? You have kept this separate for good reasons." "I am tired of the power imbalance, the constant threat of withdrawing financial support. It is time to reset the relationship." That night, I called Professor Jenkins to discuss my plan. He had become not just a mentor but a father figure of sorts, offering the guidance and support my actual father never had. "Are you sure this is about resetting the relationship and not about proving your worth?" he asked gently. "Because those are very different goals with different approaches." His question made me pause. "Maybe both," I admitted. "Is that wrong?" "Not wrong, just complicated. Money and family are always a volatile mix. Whatever you decide, make sure you are doing it for the right reasons. Not to hurt them or prove something, but to establish healthy boundaries." I took his advice to heart as I made preparations over the following weeks. I gathered documentation of my company's success, not to boast, but to establish facts. I prepared answers for the questions that would inevitably come. Most importantly, I worked on what I would say and how I would say it, striving for assertiveness without aggression. As the wedding approached, the pressure intensified. My mother called with endless questions about my travel arrangements. My father emailed a detailed schedule of events I was expected to attend, including the rehearsal dinner and a golf outing with Trevor's friends. Trevor sent awkward texts about bachelor party plans. I booked my flight to arrive the morning of the rehearsal dinner, planning to leave immediately after the wedding reception. 2 days was all I could stomach, and even that felt like a stretch. The night before my departure, Zoe surprised me by announcing she was coming with me. "You should not have to face this alone," she said when I protested. "Besides, I am curious to meet this family I have heard so much about." Having Zoe by my side changed everything. As we packed, I realized I was no longer the defenseless child or the overlooked teenager. I was a successful adult, with a supportive partner returning not as a supplicant, but as an equal. When our plane touched down in Chicago, I felt a strange calm. Whatever happened in the next 48 hours, I knew I would leave with the truth finally in the open. No more hiding, no more pretending, no more power imbalance. We checked into our hotel, deliberately choosing not to stay at my parents' house despite my mother's insistence. As we dressed for the rehearsal dinner, Zoe caught me staring at my reflection. "Ready to show them who Mason really is?" she asked with an encouraging smile. I nodded, adjusting my tie. More than ready. The reunion with my extended family at the rehearsal dinner was predictably uncomfortable. Aunt Catherine immediately asked if I was still studying computers, as if I were pursuing a hobby rather than an advanced degree at one of the world's top institutions. Uncle Robert wanted to know if I had a real job lined up after graduation. Cousins I barely recognized made awkward conversation about Boston weather. Through it all, Zoe was my anchor, charming everyone she met while subtly redirecting condescending questions. She had a way of mentioning my accomplishments that seemed natural rather than boastful, leaving family members slightly confused about the disconnect between their perception of me and the reality she described. My father maintained his usual controlling presence, dictating seating arrangements and dominating conversations. My mother fluttered anxiously around, making sure everything was perfect. Trevor seemed genuinely happy, though I noticed he still deferred to our father on most decisions. As the night wound down, Trevor pulled me aside. "Thanks for coming, Mason. I know you and Dad have your issues, but it means a lot that you are here." For a moment, I saw a glimpse of the brother I might have had in a different family. "I would not miss it," I said, and meant it despite everything. That night back at the hotel, I reviewed my plan one last time. The confrontation was inevitable now, but I was determined it would happen on my terms. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Zoe said, as we got ready for bed, Remember that you have built a good life that has nothing to do with their approval." I kissed her gently. "With you in it, how could it not be good?" Morning brought bright sunshine and the beginning of what promised to be the most consequential day in my family's recent history, though none of them knew it yet. The morning of Trevor's wedding dawned clear and unseasonably warm for June in Chicago. From our hotel room window, I could see the country club, where the ceremony would take place, its manicured grounds stretching out like a green carpet leading to the lake beyond. Everything looked perfect, exactly as my father would have demanded. Zoe and I arrived at the venue early as instructed. The groomsmen were gathering in a luxurious suite where breakfast and champagne had been laid out. Trevor greeted me with a hug that felt more genuine than our interaction the night before. "Mason, you made it," he said, clapping me on the back. "Guys, this is my little brother, the MIT genius." The introduction caught me off guard. Trevor had never referred to me as a genius before, at least not without irony. The other groomsmen, mostly Trevor's fraternity brothers and business school friends, gave polite nods before returning to their conversations about golf handicaps and stock portfolios. As we got dressed in our matching tuxedos, I noticed Trevor seemed nervous, fidgeting with his bow tie and checking his phone repeatedly. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah, just wedding jitters, I guess." He lowered his voice. "Can I tell you something weird? I am kind of terrified." "Of getting married?" "No, not that part. Of the rest of it. Dad has been talking about how I will take over more client relationships after the wedding, how marrying into the Davis family opens new doors. Sometimes it feels like this wedding is more of a business merger than—" He trailed off, looking embarrassed. For perhaps the first time I felt genuine sympathy for my golden child brother. He might have received all the attention and advantages, but he had also shouldered all the expectations. "Trevor, do you love Jessica?" I asked directly. His face softened immediately. "God, yes. She is amazing. Way too good for me, honestly." "Then focus on that today. The rest is just noise." He seemed to consider this, then nodded slowly. When did my little brother get so wise? Before I could respond, our father burst into the room, already issuing directives. "Photographer wants groomsmen photos in 10 minutes. Trevor, your bow tie is crooked. Mason, where is your boutonniere?" Just like that, the moment of connection with my brother evaporated. We were back to our assigned roles. Trevor the golden son, me the afterthought. The next few hours passed in a blur of photographs, last-minute adjustments, and my father's increasingly stressed commands. By the time guests began arriving for the ceremony, the entire wedding party was on edge. Zoe found me just before we were due to line up for the processional. She looked stunning in her blue dress, a sight that momentarily made me forget all the family drama. "How are you holding up?" she asked, straightening my already straight tie as an excuse to talk privately. "Surprisingly okay. Had an actual human moment with Trevor earlier before Dad shut it down." She smiled encouragingly. "Remember, you are here for Trevor today. The rest can wait until the reception." The ceremony itself was beautiful, I had to admit. Jessica looked radiant walking down the aisle, and the genuine joy on Trevor's face when he saw her made me wonder again what kind of person he might have become without our father's influence. They had written their own vows, simple but heartfelt promises that suggested a depth to their relationship I had not previously appreciated. Our mother cried throughout, dabbing at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. Our father sat rigid and proud like a king overseeing a diplomatic alliance rather than a father witnessing his son's marriage. As we processed out after the ceremony, I caught Zoe's eye in the crowd. She gave me a subtle thumbs up that bolstered my confidence for what was to come. The cocktail hour before the reception was held on the terrace, overlooking the golf course. My father worked the room like a politician, introducing Trevor to important business contacts and accepting congratulations as if he were the one who had just gotten married. My mother floated alongside him, the perfect corporate wife, while I mingled awkwardly with distant relatives and friends of the family who seemed surprised I existed. "You are Trevor's brother," one of my father's colleagues asked, peering at me over his gin and tonic. "Richard never mentioned you were so grown up. What are you in college?" "Finishing my master's degree at MIT, actually," I replied. "Oh, MIT. the man said with exaggerated impression. Planning to join the family business after tech department could always use smart young blood. I have other plans, I said, simply not elaborating. As the cocktail hour progressed, I noticed my father watching me from across the terrace, his expression calculating. He had noticed me talking with his business associates and seemed concerned about what I might be saying. The irony was not lost on me. For years he had ignored my existence, and now he was worried about my influence. The reception began with the traditional entrance of the wedding party. Trevor and Jessica were introduced as Mr. and Mrs. Trevor Wilson to enthusiastic applause. They looked genuinely happy as they took to the dance floor for their first dance, moving with the comfortable synchronicity of two people truly in tune with each other. Our table was positioned prominently at the front of the room, with my father holding court like a medieval lord. Jessica's parents, the Davises, joined us along with both sets of grandparents and Zoe. My father had initially tried to seat Zoe at a distant table with distant cousins, but I had insisted she join us, one of the few battles I had won in the wedding planning process. Dinner was an elaborate 5-course affair with wine pairings selected by my father himself, a fact he mentioned repeatedly to anyone within earshot. Between courses, he engaged Mr. Davis in conversation about potential business synergies now that their children had united their families. "The Wilson-Davis partnership has a nice ring to it, does not it?" Henry, my father said, raising his glass in a mini toast. Trevor looked uncomfortable but said nothing while Jessica chatted politely with my mother about honeymoon plans. I sat quietly observing the dynamics I had grown up with now playing out in front of Zoe, who occasionally squeezed my hand under the table when my father said something particularly obnoxious. The alcohol flowed freely as the night progressed, loosening tongues and lowering inhibitions. After the main course, my father clinked his glass and stood for what everyone assumed would be a standard father of the groom toast. I immediately tensed, knowing from experience that my father was incapable of speaking publicly without turning it into a performance of his own success. "For those who do not know me, I am Richard Wilson, Trevor's proud father," he began, his voice carrying easily across the room. "Today is the culmination of everything a father hopes for his son." What followed was less a toast to the newlyweds and more a highlight reel of Trevor's life, carefully curated to reflect well on my father's parenting. Trevor's academic achievements, his athletic prowess, his business acumen, all were presented as evidence of the Wilson family excellence. And now Trevor joins Davis Marketing Solutions with Wilson Consulting to create what I am certain will be an unstoppable force in the industry. My father continued, drawing uncomfortable laughter from guests who had not expected a business pitch in a wedding toast. Then, to my surprise, he turned his attention to me. "We are blessed to have both our sons with us today. Mason has come all the way from MIT to be here." The sudden spotlight made me sit up straighter. This was unexpected. While Trevor has followed in my footsteps in the business world, Mason has chosen a different path with his computer studies. There was a slight but unmistakable diminutive tone in how he said computer studies, as if I were dabbling in a hobby rather than completing an advanced degree. "Perhaps someday soon he will tell us what his plans are after graduation. The tech support department at Wilson Consulting always has an opening for family," he added with a chuckle that several guests mirrored. I felt Zoe stiffen beside me. The dismissal was so casual, so practiced, that my father probably did not even realize how belittling it was. But the last 4 years had changed me. I was no longer the child who would silently absorb his condescension. As my father continued his toast, eventually returning his focus to Trevor and Jessica, I made a decision. The confrontation I had been planning would happen tonight, but not as a reaction to his provocation. It would happen on my terms when I was ready. After dinner, as the dancing began in earnest, I noticed my father holding court with a group of business associates, Trevor dutifully at his side. My mother was chatting with the wedding planner, likely already discussing how to feature the event in their country club newsletter. I turned to Zoe. "I think it is time." She searched my face. "Are you sure? You can always wait for a more private moment." "No," I said firmly. "They have made my life public property all these years. This happens now on my terms." Zoe nodded, understanding the significance of the moment. "I am right behind you." I approached the circle of businessmen surrounding my father. "Zoe, a reassuring presence at my side. As I drew near, I heard my father mid-anecdote about Trevor's first big client meeting. "Excuse me," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "I would like to speak with my father for a moment." My father looked annoyed at the interruption, but maintained his public smile. "Mason, we are in the middle of something important here." "Yes," I heard. "You were just telling everyone about Trevor's promising future. I thought perhaps you might be interested in hearing about mine as well." A flash of irritation crossed his face, quickly masked. "This is hardly the time or place, son." "Actually, I think it is perfect," I replied, not backing down. "You just publicly speculated about my career prospects in your toast. I thought I should clarify a few things." The businessmen around us looked uncomfortable, sensing the tension. Trevor's expression was a mix of confusion and concern. "Mason," my father said in a warning tone, "this is your brother's wedding." "I am well aware, and I could not be happier for Trevor and Jessica." I turned to my brother. "Trevor, I apologize for this timing, but I think it is important." To my surprise, Trevor nodded. "It is okay, Mason. Say what you need to say." With that permission, I turned back to my father. The moment of truth had arrived. "Dad, for as long as I can remember, you have treated my interest in computer science as a childish hobby, something to be tolerated but not respected." I began, keeping my voice calm but firm. "You have threatened to cut my tuition as a way to control my choices, including whether I attend family events." My father's face reddened, slightly aware of the audience witnessing this confrontation. "Mason, this is inappropriate. We can discuss family matters privately." "No, I do not think we can. You have never given my choices or achievements the same public acknowledgement you have given Trevor's instinctee. So perhaps it is time I shared a few things publicly." By now, several nearby guests had quieted to listen. Jessica's father looked particularly interested, perhaps sensing family drama that might affect his new business connections. 4 years ago, during my sophomore year at MIT, I developed an app that helps students navigate campus efficiently. It started small, just at MIT, but it grew. Today, that app has evolved into Campus Connect, a platform used at over 200 universities nationwide. There was a murmur of recognition from some of the younger guests. Campus Connect had become quite well known in college circles, though I had deliberately kept my name out of the press, operating through my company rather than as an individual. That little company I founded now has 42 employees. Last year we secured Series B funding at a valuation of $68 million. As the majority shareholder, my personal net worth is currently just over $22 million. The silence that followed was absolute. My father's face went from red to pale in seconds. Trevor's mouth literally hung open. My mother, who had drifted over during my speech, grabbed the back of a chair for support. "I do not need your money for graduate school, Dad. My program is fully funded, and even if it were not, I could pay for it myself many times over. I do not need your approval for my career choices, and I certainly do not need your threats to ensure my attendance at family events." Mr. Davis, who had been listening intently, suddenly spoke up. "Wait, you founded Campus Connect. My daughter uses that at Northwestern, says she cannot live without it." "Yes, sir," I replied politely. "We launched at Northwestern during our third expansion phase." My father, recovering slightly, attempted to regain control of the situation. "Well, this is certainly surprising news, Mason. Why would you keep this from your family?" The question was so disingenuous I almost laughed. "Really, Dad, you have spent my entire life dismissing my interests as unimportant. The last time I showed you a programming project, you called it playing with computers, and told me to focus on real work like Trevor." Trevor, to his credit, looked genuinely distressed. "Mason, I had no idea. This is incredible." "Thanks, Trevor. And I am sorry to do this at your wedding. This is not about overshadowing your day." Jessica, who had appeared at Trevor's side, surprisingly smiled. "Are you kidding? Finding out my new brother-in-law is a tech millionaire is the least dramatic thing that has happened in this family merger. I mean, wedding." The joke broke some of the tension, earning nervous laughter from those nearby. My mother finally found her voice. $22 million, Mason. Why would you not tell us? Because it was never about the money, Mom. It was about being taken seriously, about having my choices respected, about not being the family disappointment when I was building something valuable. You were never a disappointment, she protested weakly. Then why did you let Dad treat me like one? The question hung in the air, heavy with years of unspoken hurt. My father, ever the businessman, was already shifting strategies. I could practically see him recalculating my value in the family equation. Son, this is remarkable news. You should have told us. We could have helped, provided connections, guidance. That is exactly why I did not tell you, I replied evenly. This was something I needed to build on my own without it becoming another extension of Wilson Consulting or another opportunity for you to take credit. A flash of anger crossed his face at this direct challenge to his authority, quickly replaced by a more calculated expression. Well, we are certainly proud of what you have accomplished. Imagine what our companies could do together with your technology expertise and our market presence. And there it was, the attempt to absorb and control, to turn my independent success into a family achievement, primarily his achievement. Some things never changed. Thank you, but Campus Connect is doing quite well on its own. We are actually in preliminary acquisition talks with several major tech companies. This was only partially true. The discussions were very early and exploratory, but I needed to shut down his takeover attempt immediately. Trevor, seeming to sense the familiar pattern, surprisingly stepped in. Dad, this is amazing news about Mason, but maybe we should just celebrate it without immediately trying to fold it into the family business. This unexpected support from my brother momentarily stunned both me and our father. Jessica squeezed Trevor's arm approvingly. My father recovered quickly, his public persona reasserting itself. Of course. This is wonderful news. A toast to Mason's success. He raised his glass, seamlessly transitioning into the role of proud father, as if he had not spent years belittling my ambitions. The surrounding guests, relieved that the tense moment seemed to be passing, raised their glasses as well. To Mason, several voices echoed. As the reception returned to normal around us, with guests dispersing to the dance floor or dessert table, my father leaned in close to me. We need to talk privately, he said, his voice low. The library, 5 minutes. I nodded, having expected this. The public confrontation was only the beginning. Zoe, who had remained supportively at my side throughout, squeezed my hand. Want me to come with you? No, this part I need to do alone, I replied. But thank you for being here for the hard part. As my father walked away, Trevor approached me, shaking his head in disbelief. $22 million. Seriously. Give or take, depending on the day's valuation, I said with a small smile. Why did you not tell me? I mean, I get why you did not tell Dad, but me. The hurt in his voice was genuine, making me reconsider our relationship. Perhaps Trevor had been as much a prisoner of our father's expectations as I had been, just in a different way. Honestly, I was not sure whose side you would be on. You have always been Dad's son in every way. Trevor winced. That is fair, I guess. But Mason, this is incredible what you have built. I want to hear everything about it when all this wedding craziness is over. I would like that, I said, surprised to find I meant it. As Trevor rejoined his bride, I steeled myself for the private conversation to come. The public revelation had gone better than expected, but the real test would be facing my father one-on-one, away from the moderating presence of witnesses. 5 minutes later, I entered the country club's wood-paneled library, where my father was waiting, a tumbler of scotch in his hand. Another glass sat on the desk, presumably for me. $22 million, he said without preamble. And you kept this from your family. Do you have any idea how that makes us look? Of all the possible reactions, this was perhaps the most predictable. Not pride in my achievement, not regret for his dismissal, but concern about appearances. That is what concerns you right now. How it looks. Family businesses are built on trust, Mason. On sharing information, working together. We do not have a family business, Dad. You have a business that Trevor works for. I built something separate, something mine. With an education I paid for, he countered. With a partial scholarship and student loans I have since repaid, I corrected him. But yes, you contributed, and I am grateful for that support. What I am not grateful for is how you used that financial support as a weapon whenever I did not fall in line with your expectations. My father took a long sip of his scotch, visibly trying to control his temper. When he spoke again, his tone had shifted to one I recognized from his business negotiations, reasonable, conciliatory, but with an underlying calculation. Perhaps I have been too hard on you, too dismissive of your interests. But you have to understand, Mason, I only wanted what was best for you. The tech industry is volatile, unpredictable. I wanted you to have stability. No, you wanted me to be like Trevor, to follow your plan, validate your choices. He did not deny this, which was something. Instead, he tried a different approach. Well, clearly, your path has worked out extraordinarily well, and I am proud of you, son, truly. But I wish you had trusted us with this information sooner. We are family. The words sounded right, but something in his expression did not match. There was no real reckoning with his past behavior, just an adjustment to new information that changed my value in his eyes. Dad, I am not looking for your approval anymore. I do not need it. What I want is respect. Respect for my choices, my boundaries, my independence. Can you give me that? He considered this, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. You have certainly earned my respect with what you have accomplished, but family involves compromise, Mason. Give and take. I have done all the giving, and you have done all the taking for 26 years, I replied evenly. That changes now. We stared at each other across the room, two adults rather than father and son. I realized with sudden clarity that we might never have the relationship I had longed for as a child. He might never be capable of loving me for who I was rather than what I could do for him or his reputation. And for the first time, I was completely at peace with that. I will always be your son, I said finally. And I will always care about this family. But from now on, I participate on my terms, not because of financial threats or guilt trips. My father nodded, slowly accepting, if not fully embracing, this new reality. Fair enough. Though I hope you will consider some collaboration between our companies in the future. The synergy potential is significant. Even now, he could not help thinking in business terms. Some things would never change, but I had changed, and that was enough. We should get back to the reception, I said, leaving my untouched scotch on the desk. This is Trevor's day after all. As we returned to the celebration, I felt a weight lift that I had carried for as long as I could remember. The truth was out, for better or worse. What happened next would be on my terms, not his. Trevor caught my eye across the room and raised his glass slightly in acknowledgement. Perhaps there was hope for at least one relationship to be rebuilt in this family. Zoe met me halfway across the dance floor, concern evident in her eyes. How did it go? I pulled her into a dance using the movement and music to shield our conversation from curious onlookers. About as well as could be expected. He is still my father with all that entails, but something has shifted. For the better. I considered this as we swayed to the music. For the more honest, at least. And that is a start. The remainder of the wedding reception passed in a blur of curious glances and whispered conversations. News of my revelation had spread quickly among the guests, turning me from Trevor's forgettable brother into an object of intense interest. Several of my father's business associates found excuses to chat with me, suddenly discovering my existence after years of looking through me at family events. My mother hovered nearby throughout the evening, clearly distressed but unsure how to approach me. When she finally worked up the courage during a quiet moment, her eyes were rimmed with tears. Why did you never tell me, Mason? All this time I thought you were struggling, that you needed our help. The hurt in her voice was genuine, but it also reflected her own blindness to the family dynamics she had helped maintain. Would it have made a difference, Mom? Would you have stood up to Dad if I had told you? She flinched at the directness of my question. I always tried to support both you boys equally. No, you did not, I said gently, but firmly. You let Dad favor Trevor openly and never said a word. You enabled the situation even if you did not create it. Tears spilled onto her cheeks. I never meant to hurt you. I just wanted peace in the family. Peace built on inequality is not really peace, Mom. It is just suppression. She dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. I do not know how to fix this. It starts with acknowledging what happened, with seeing me clearly for who I am, not who Dad wanted me to be. She nodded, visibly processing this. You have grown into such a strong man. I wish I could take credit, but I think you did that despite us, not because of us. It was the most honest thing she had ever said to me, and in that moment I felt a flicker of hope that perhaps my relationship with my mother might be salvageable in a way my relationship with my father might not be. Trevor found me as the reception was winding down, Jessica at his side. They were leaving soon for their honeymoon in the Maldives, a wedding gift from our parents. So tech millionaire, Trevor said, shaking his head in amazement. All this time I was feeling sorry for my struggling student brother. That was easier than explaining the truth, I replied with a shrug. For what it is worth. I think what you did was incredible, Jessica interjected. Building something from nothing on your own terms. Trevor talks about doing that someday, but she glanced at her new husband with affectionate exasperation. But Dad has my next 15 years mapped out at the firm, Trevor finished with a grimace. Speaking of which, he is in full damage control mode right now. I have never seen him work a room so hard. I glanced across the hall where my father was indeed engaged in animated conversation with several key business associates, likely spinning my revelation to his advantage somehow. Let him spin, I said. I am done worrying about how he frames my choices. Trevor hesitated, then asked the question I could see had been bothering him. Are we okay, Mason? You and me, I know I was not always the best brother. The simple acknowledgement meant more than I had expected. We are okay, Trevor. We were both just playing the roles we were assigned. Maybe now we can figure out who we actually are to each other. He pulled me into a spontaneous hug, something he had not done since we were children. I want that. When we get back from the honeymoon, let us have dinner, just the two of us. No Dad, no company talk. I would like that, I said, genuinely touched by the gesture. After Trevor and Jessica departed amid a shower of rose petals, Zoe and I returned to our hotel emotionally exhausted but relieved that the confrontation was finally over. How do you feel, she asked as we collapsed onto the hotel bed, still in our formal wear. Liberated, I answered after a moment's reflection, like I have been holding my breath for years and can finally exhale. The next morning brought a flurry of text messages and calls. Trevor sent a brief message from the airport. Still processing everything. Proud of you, bro. Talk when we get back. My mother called, sounding tentative and emotional. I did not sleep last night thinking about everything you said. I need to apologize properly, Mason. Not just for last night, but for all of it. We will have that conversation, Mom, but it needs to be in person when things have settled down. Of course, she agreed quickly. Whenever you are ready. Noticeably absent was any contact from my father. I was not surprised. He was likely regrouping, recalculating, planning his next move. Richard Wilson did not apologize. He strategized. Zoe and I had planned to stay one more night in Chicago, but by mutual agreement decided to change our flights and return to Boston early. I needed the sanctuary of my own space, my chosen life, to process everything that had happened. As we packed, Zoe paused, holding my suit from the wedding. Do you think anything will really change with your family? I considered this carefully. With my mother, maybe. She seems genuinely shaken. With Trevor, possibly, though, that depends on whether he can ever truly step out from under Dad's shadow. With my father, I shook my head. He might adjust his tactics, but people like him do not fundamentally change. They just adapt their strategy. On the flight back to Boston, I received an unexpected email from Mr. Davis, Jessica's father. Impressed by what you have built with Campus Connect. Would be interested in discussing potential synergies if you are ever open to conversation. No pressure and no involvement from your father's company necessary. It was a small validation that felt significant, my success being recognized independently on its own merits, not as an extension of the Wilson family business. When we landed in Boston, the familiar skyline greeted us like an old friend. Cambridge, with its academic energy and innovation culture, had become more of a home to me than Naperville ever was. This was where I had found myself, built myself away from the shadow of family expectations. The next day, I met with Professor Jenkins in his office, filling him in on the wedding confrontation and its aftermath. "Sounds like you handled it with remarkable composure," he said, leaning back in his chair. "How do you feel about it now with a bit of distance?" "Relieved mostly, but also sad in a way I did not expect. Like I am mourning the father-daughter relationship I never really had, and probably never will." He nodded thoughtfully. "That is a very mature perspective. Many people spend their entire lives trying to win approval from parents who are constitutionally incapable of giving it. Recognizing that reality is painful but ultimately freeing." "So what happens now?" I asked, suddenly feeling adrift, despite the certainty I had felt during the confrontation. "Now you live your life on your terms. Set boundaries where needed, open doors where possible, but always from a position of self-knowledge and strength, not from that wounded child place." His words resonated deeply. The confrontation had not been an ending, but a beginning. The start of authentic relationships based on who we truly were, not the roles we had been assigned. Over the next few weeks, the ripple effects of my revelation continued to spread through my family. Trevor called from his honeymoon sounding more relaxed than I had heard him in years away from our father's influence. "I keep thinking about what you said at the wedding," he admitted. "About building something of your own. I have ideas, Mason. Things I have wanted to try that Dad always dismissed as too risky. Maybe it is time you explored those ideas," I suggested. "You are married now, building your own family. You get to make your own choices." He sighed heavily. "It is not that simple when you are in the family business. Everything is entangled: money, relationships, expectations. It is only entangled if you let it be." I countered gently. "Trust me on this." My mother began sending tentative text messages sharing small details of her day and asking genuine questions about my life and work. It was awkward at first, like we were learning a new language together, but slowly, a more authentic connection began to form. My father predictably took a different approach. 2 weeks after the wedding, I received a formal email from him with the subject line, "Wilson Family Trust Restructuring." "In light of your recent financial disclosures," the email began, "we are updating the family trust to reflect your self-sufficiency. As you no longer require educational support, those funds will be redirected to more pressing family needs." It was so perfectly on brand that I actually laughed out loud when I read it. No acknowledgement of his behavior, no apology for the years of dismissal, just a business-like adjustment to new information. He was removing the one piece of leverage he thought he had over me, presenting it as a logical business decision rather than the petty retaliation it clearly was. I replied with equal formality, "I understand and support this decision. Thank you for the educational assistance you have provided thus far. As discussed, I am fully capable of managing my own financial affairs going forward." What my father did not know was that his attempt to punish me by cutting financial ties actually gave me exactly what I wanted: clean, clear boundaries and independence. Sometimes winning comes in unexpected forms. 6 months after Trevor's wedding, I sat in my Cambridge apartment looking out at the first snowfall of winter. My life had settled into a new normal that would have been unimaginable a year earlier. I was completing my final semester of graduate studies while serving as a part-time advisor to Campus Connect, which had continued to thrive under the CEO I had appointed. Zoe and I had moved in together, turning my formerly sparse apartment into a warm, inviting space that felt like a true home. Our relationship had deepened through the family crisis, her steady support giving me strength I did not know I needed. The changes in my family dynamics were still evolving, some more successful than others. Trevor had surprised everyone by announcing he was stepping back from our father's company to start his own boutique marketing firm, focusing on sustainability-minded businesses. The decision had caused a major rift with our father, but had given Trevor a new energy and purpose I had never seen in him before. "I have been following someone else's dream my whole life," he told me during one of our now regular phone calls. "Watching you build something meaningful on your own terms made me realize I could do the same." Jessica fully supported his decision, even taking a reduced role in her father's company to help Trevor launch his venture. They seemed genuinely happy, their relationship stronger without the weight of our father's expectations. My mother had undergone perhaps the most unexpected transformation. After 30 years of deferring to my father in all things, she had enrolled in art history courses at the local community college, rekindling the passion she had abandoned after marriage. She called me regularly, our conversations no longer superficial exchanges but genuine efforts to understand each other. "I keep thinking about all the years I missed really knowing you," she said during one particularly emotional call. "I was so focused on keeping the peace that I never stood up for what was right." "Mom, we cannot change the past," I told her gently, "but we get to decide what happens now." As for my father, our relationship had settled into a state of distant formality. He had eventually processed my financial independence, not as a personal achievement, but as a fortunate accident that reflected well on his genetics, if not his parenting. In his mind, my success had retroactively become part of the Wilson family legacy, a narrative revision that required no accountability on his part. I had made peace with this reality. Some people cannot give what they do not possess, and my father simply did not have the capacity for the kind of emotional honesty that real reconciliation would require. I maintained polite but bounded contact, protecting myself from his attempts to control or diminish, while leaving the door open for any genuine change that might someday occur. The Thanksgiving after the wedding marked the first real test of our new family dynamic. After much discussion with Zoe, I agreed to host my parents and Trevor and Jessica in Boston, rather than returning to Illinois. Having them in my territory, seeing my actual life rather than their assumptions about it, seemed important. The gathering was awkward at times, but ultimately productive. My father made several attempts to reassert old patterns, asking pointed questions about my company's exit strategy and suggesting potential acquirers, as if I had not been managing these aspects successfully for years. Rather than becoming defensive, I simply provided brief factual responses and changed the subject. Actually, I am more excited about the scholarship foundation I am establishing for first-generation tech students. It launches next semester. This announcement sparked genuine interest from everyone except my father. The scholarship had been my way of paying forward the opportunities I had received, specifically targeting students from backgrounds where their technical interests might be discouraged or dismissed as impractical. "That is wonderful, Mason," my mother said sincerely. "Using your success to help others is the best possible outcome." Trevor raised his glass. "To giving others the chance to build something meaningful on their own terms. That is a legacy worth creating." My father said nothing, but I no longer needed his approval to know my choices were valid. After dinner, as Trevor and I washed dishes together, a domestic task our father had always considered beneath him, my brother confided, "You know, for years I thought I was the lucky one being the favorite. Now I realize how much it cost me never having to fight for my own identity." "We both paid different prices," I acknowledged, "but we get to write our own stories now." The healing process was not linear. There were still difficult conversations, moments of backsliding into old patterns, occasions when boundaries needed to be reasserted. But slowly, gradually, a new foundation was being built, one based on authenticity rather than performance, on mutual respect rather than power dynamics. Perhaps the most profound change was within myself. The constant need for validation that had driven me for so many years had diminished, replaced by a quiet confidence in my own judgment and worth. Success was no longer something I pursued to prove my father wrong, but something I defined on my own terms: contribution, growth, meaningful connection, and the freedom to chart my own course. Professor Jenkins, who had become a true mentor and friend, summed it up best during our last advisory meeting before his retirement. "The most important success is not what you build in the world, Mason, but who you become while building it. By that measure, you have already succeeded beyond what most achieve in a lifetime." As winter deepened in Boston, I found myself looking forward rather than back. The past had shaped me, but did not define me. The future was unwritten, full of possibilities that extended far beyond the narrow path that had once been prescribed for me. If there is one lesson I have learned through all of this, it is that true success lies not in wealth or status or even achievement, but in the courage to define your own values and live by them regardless of external pressure. Sometimes the hardest person to stand up to is the one who should have been your greatest advocate. But in that difficult stand lies the key to genuine freedom. What is your experience with family expectations? Have you ever had to choose between pleasing others and being true to yourself? Leave a comment below and share your story. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more authentic life stories. And remember, sharing these stories helps others feel less alone in their struggles, so consider sending this to someone who might need to hear it today. Thank you for listening to my journey, and may you find the courage to write your own story, whatever that may be.